On today's Locked On Jayhawks, deep diving further into Kevin McCullar returning to KU, what it means for the team, how he can impact starting lineup projections early on.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can hear me as well Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence with Rock Chalk Sports Talk. You can also hear me right here with Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get any of your podcasts. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, which you can also find on YouTube, we are going to be talking about Kevin McCullar returning to the fold for KU. We talked a little bit on yesterday on a bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks about Kevin McCullar returning and just some surface level stuff for Kevin, but we wanted to take a deeper dive into it here on today's edition of the show. You know, it's funny. This is better for KU than if they would have landed some of the guys that we've talked about or KU had been rumored to be possibly going after, possibly getting over the past couple of weeks. Like, the idea of what Mackenzie Mbako could be, if he lives up to the hype, if he lives up to the potential, and he looks like a top 10 pick who's shooting 38% from three and could play the 3 or the 4, yeah, at that point, sure, that player might end up being better than Kevin McCullar. But also when you're bringing in a freshman, there is risk, right? You saw the reward with Grady Dick. You saw the risk with MJ Rice. And in a recruiting class that isn't seen as a great recruiting class, like if you were putting the odds on who's going to be better, Kevin McCullar or Mackenzie Mbako, who's going to have a better college basketball season here in 2023 to 2024, I think McCullar would have the better odds of being the better player. Who's a better player, Arthur Kaluma or Kevin McCullar? Like maybe, again, you could say the ceiling is a little bit higher on Arthur Kaluma, but with McCullar, you don't have to worry about how is he going to fit into the system? What is he going to look like at KU? Is he going to make those adjustments good coming to Lawrence? And I think just in general, Kevin McCullar was a better player last year than Arthur Kaluma. So, you know, you look down the list, the guys that were available at this point in time, this was your best option. This was your best option all the way through if it was a possibility, which obviously it turned out to be because you had the returning experience, you had the returning familiarity of a guy in the system, you have a guy that you know Bill Self trusts, you have a guy who is an elite defender, one of the best in college basketball, who I think we saw his game even get better as the season did get on in terms of his comfortability driving to the basket. We saw a straight line drives. We saw some spin moves. Like he was really good in the NCAA tournament game for Kansas. And this represented your best option. If you had realistic options at everybody available, whether it was the transfers that were available, whether it was freshmen, whether it was Kevin McCullar, as far as wing players go, and also players just available at this point in time, this was your best option remaining. Like I said on the bonus episode, bit of a positive surprise. Like the Mackenzie Mbako thing was kind of a surprise that they didn't land him, at least to some and me. This was a surprise. I think I pegged it. I think I said, yeah, I guess you'd put a higher percentage on Kevin McCullar coming back than you would with Grady Dick because there are more reasons to say that. But I think I only put like a 15% chance on it happening. I didn't totally expect this to happen. But certainly once you get Bill Self involved, a very, influential person, someone who can certainly provide a lot of reason to come back, and you start getting NIL money involved, and maybe the NBA draft process didn't go as well as he would have hoped. He had the one scrimmage where he certainly struggled. He had, I think in the second scrimmage, his first scrimmage, I think he went 3 for 5, came off the bench. His second scrimmage, I think he went 0 for 5 and had, fouled out of the game, to where I wonder how much that affected things to where he wasn't getting the promises or looks to where he was going. Now, keep in mind, Bill Self said toward the beginning of the offseason that last year, before Kevin McCullar transferred to Kansas, McCullar had multiple two-way contract guarantees, two-way offers. And so some people were leading to believe that, yeah, if he would have had that offer this year, he would have just taken it. That kind of told me that if he had multiple two-way guarantees last year and he didn't go pro, wouldn't he be looking for more than that? Wouldn't he be looking for an actual guarantee of a contract? And so I kind of view it as That's the guarantee he was looking for. If anybody would have even guaranteed a contract, even like a 2-year deal as a second round pick or something, that he would have stayed in the NBA draft. But because maybe it was only two-way offers, he figures I can make more, if not the same type of money off NIL here at Kansas. I have the opportunity to have a phenomenal final season at KU. And if you come back and he does finally improve that 3-point shot and it goes up to 35 36% from three, maybe you are talking about a late first round pick. I know he would be 24 years old, but like Thomas Duarte was a lottery pick as a 24-25-year-old. Derek White was like 23-24. He was a late first round pick for the Spurs. If you put it together, we know what he can bring defensively. It's still kind of there. And this is so important for KU. You now look at a guy who, okay, obviously it's 6'6", 205 pounds. This is a kid who, at least that's what his college basketball reference. I think he might be a little bit bigger than that, but somebody who, comes in and gives you flexibility at playing both the 3 and the 4 positions. Important for a team that doesn't have a lot of those other options on this team, and he fits the billing perfectly. You know what you're getting out of him, and we'll get into what he brings to the table, strengths and weaknesses, even though this will be kind of like a deep dive, even though everybody saw it and kind of knows. We'll go kind of more into the numbers here. But for KU, you now return 3 starters to the fold, which Kevin Flaherty of 24/7 Sports pointed out that every national title team since 1998 has had at least 3 returning starters come back to the team. So, and you go back and I think the one, it was unfortunately the 97 Arizona team bucked the trend there. But that means that you fit that billing if you're Kansas. Think back to the 2021 to 2, some similarities with that to this. And that team obviously won the title. That team brought in basically a whole new bench. You brought in a bunch of freshmen onto the team, right? Your KJ Adams, Zach Clements, so on of the world, Bobby Pettiford. You brought in a bunch of transfers, Cam Martin, Joe Yesufu, Remy Martin, Jalen Coleman-Lands. But at the end of the day, you had 4 of your 5 starters back. And then your 5th starter was DeJuan Harris, who didn't start the previous year, but was a role player. This year's team doesn't have the returning role players, but now you have the 3 of the 5 starters back. You bring in your transfers. And the transfers you bring in, if Timberlake is going to start and Dickinson's going to start, I mean, those are experienced guys at the collegiate level. Maybe not the Bill Self system, but, you look at Arterio Morris, he's experienced at least a year of college basketball too. Parker Brown's experienced all sorts of games. So you have a very experienced starting lineup. You have a very experienced team to mix with some other talented transfers and freshmen coming into the fold. You kind of have everything that you're looking for now. This to me completes, like, sure, if a Grant Nelson or a Zion Pullen or whoever is like, I still want to come there and compete, you probably still take them and say, we'll see how the rotation figures itself out from here. But I also think Kansas is at a point where even with an open scholarship to get them to 12, they would just be content sitting on it and saying, we're fine with having just 11 scholarship players. We feel like we have a full rotation of 7, 8, 9 guys, even among just those 11, and that we'll take another scholarship, count it off, and that way we'll have more scholarship availability in the 2 future years from the self-imposed sanctions. Now, does it make sense to bring on another, like Kevin McCullar has had injury stuff over the course of his career. He had a few games that he missed because of an injury, the back injury during the Big 12 tournament. I forget if it was an ankle injury or what that caused him to miss. I think it was the Seton Hall game or maybe the Texas Southern game. That was a game right before then. Over the course of his career, even at Texas Tech, he had injury stuff. So if you only have 11 scholarship players, but one of them has had injury problems in the past, does it make you more likely to use that last scholarship on somebody else just in case of something going out? Or is that just where the freshmen like a Jamari McDowell and Chris Johnson have their opportunity to show a little bit more? I don't know, but I think Kansas is comfortable really either way. But this is a huge move for KU that really seems to anchor them in that number 1 preseason spot, which we'll get more into later this week. We'll also get more into who does his return impact the most in terms of other players on KU. Let's get to his scouting report, though, just to go back over what he did last season. And will it be the same? Will it be different? Will it be similar? Whatever to what his role will be on this next year's team. First, though, this episode of Jayhawks is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs fit super comfortably. They have all sorts of different ways that you can get that fit put together. They have different lengths of the shorts, right? You can get your short shorts, you can get your medium ones, or you can get your long ones further down the leg, which is great for me because I have long legs. Legs are like 3/4 of my body. I have a short torso and long legs, so I need the long pant size, right? And so you're able to get the fit just right. You got the kind of stretchy waistband, which makes that even better. They're super comfortable. It feels like you're wearing gym shorts. you feel like you're getting all the positives of wearing something that's airy, that just makes you feel comfortable, that you're not, having to worry about like, oh man, I'm just ready to take these off when I get home from work. Like, no, you're going to be comfortable wearing them all night long. And the versatility, you can wear them for comfort, you can wear them for style, they look cool. And because they're nicer looking shorts, even though they feel like gym shorts, you can still, go somewhere semi-nice with your shorts on. So go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. And when you enter promo code lockedoncollege, they'll even throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti out with every order. All right, scouting report for Kevin McCullar. Let's start with the strengths. His positional versatility. On the defensive side of the ball, realistically, he can guard 1 through 5. Now, ideally, you don't probably want him guarding 1s all the time, and ideally, you don't want him guarding 5s all the time. But if he gets switched onto him, he can deal with him. And he's really good at guarding 2 through 4. You can play him 2 through 4 on the offensive end because of his size. He is somebody who's a really good rebounder, especially for his size. I mean, you're talking about this past season putting up 7 rebounds per game, 5.8 on the defensive glass. So now you have Hunter Dickinson, Kevin McCullar. KJ is a good offensive rebounder on top of that. You feel like you're going to have a good rebounding team, athletic guards to kind of go with it, which is obviously important. Obviously, the biggest strength, though, for Kevin is the defense. 2 steals per game, 0.7 blocks per game, and he's always been a great defender. His last year at Texas Tech, he was the best defender on the best defensive team in the country. Comes to Kansas, DeJuan Harris wins Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. McCullar's a first-team All-Big 12 defender. I would argue Kevin McCullar was KU's best defender. Maybe DeJuan is best in a vacuum on his position, but because McCullar can cover up multiple positions, and because of what he's such a good team defender too, beyond being a great individual defender, where he covers up for other people's mistakes. Somebody will mess up, or a cutter will get through and he'll cover him up, or he'll get a block from behind, where I think he is the most valuable defender on the team, or at least was last season. And realistically, you can make the argument now that Kansas has the 2 best defenders in the Big 12, that they did last year with DeJuan Harris and Kevin McCullar, and that they will again this next season, which is very important. So good defender, disruptive defender, so good at stripping the ball away. And it's just going to be exciting to have him back for another year in that regard. Other strengths for Kevin McCullar, you're talking about someone who I think was a good driver, a good cutter, and somebody who was able to get to the rim at a high level, especially as the season kind of went on there. He ended up shooting 52.5% on 5.3 2-point attempts per game, which that is a really good number to be at. So he is a good driver at the very least, which is helpful to have somebody else that can do that for you. Good free throw shooter, 76% on 3.4 free throw attempts per game. He's been over 70% each of his seasons in college basketball. He's good in transition. He's also a good passer, which gives you an extra ball handler out there. 2.4 assists per game last season. He averaged 3.1 assists per game his final season at Texas Tech before coming over to KU. So he's just a good passer, and especially good in those open court settings. Always good to have extra ball handling and passing for you out there. I think also it makes you feel good about how he performed in that final NCAA tournament game against Arkansas that you could add to the strengths. 5 of 8 from the floor against Arkansas, 1 of 3 from 3, 2 for 5 or 4 for 5 from 2-point range. He scored 13 points, had 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 2 blocks, just 1 turnover, played over 36 minutes of the game against Arkansas. So performed well. And, he's going to be hungry to make that deep NCAA tournament run. He got to experience a lot at KU. He got to go on some fun experiences at Texas Tech, but trying to be a key member of a team that goes deep in the NCAA tournaments, you kind of have that want to as well for him. Obviously, though, going back to the defensive side, this opens up so much for you. When you look at the synergy profile for Kevin McCullar, specifically what he did best this past season, cutting, he was in the 83rd percentile. He also was 75th percentile in miscellaneous plays, so like other things that would just find a way to kind of get the ball through the hoop. And then when you look at the weaknesses side of things, it's the shot. Are you going to be able to create shots off the bounce? Are you going to be able to hit threes? He was just in the 37th percentile in spot up shooting last season. He was shooting in the high 20s really for most of the year from 3. He ended up shooting 29.6% from 3, and that's where he's been at now all 4 years of college. So how realistic is it to expect a jump when he's been 28.6, 28.3, 31.1, and 29.6 for his career, 29.8% from three-point range? I don't know how expect is for that to necessarily go up in year one, but maybe now that you have another full offseason with the team, if you can at least get that up to maybe 33, 34%, that could be big for both you and the team. He got a lot of open looks last year. They didn't always go down. As mentioned, just 37th percentile on spot up shooting overall from 2 and 3 last season. So that certainly is the biggest weakness. And that's going to be a very important one because Kansas right now, you do have questions as a team about their 3-point shooting. So that's going to be the biggest key to try to figuring that out. The other thing is just trying to avoid injury. His final season at Texas Tech, he only played in 29 of the games. Kansas, I mentioned he missed a couple games. The year before at Texas Tech, he played in just 20 games. Year before that, 29 games. So he's missed games every year because of injury. Can you keep him healthy on a team that already is going to have less scholarship players? That'll be the big key for KU. But obviously way more strengths and weaknesses here, and he becomes one of your best players on the team. It's funny. We'll be able to have those, Hunter Dickinson, is he the best player on the team? DeJuan Harris, is he the most important player on the team? Kevin McCullar, is he second in both of those areas on the team? Where do some of these other players fit in? It's a good question. It is a lot of good debates that you can possibly have, and that's what comes with having Kevin McCullar back in the fold. Another strength you get add in there is just the experience, and having more experienced players and more experienced Bill Self players in the system is obviously a good thing. Let's finish up starting lineup expectations, rotation expectations, now that Kevin McCullar is back in the fold with Locked On Jayhawks. Well, the starting lineup projection, I think you've seen this one. Like, for instance, John Rothstein tweeted this out, and I don't know if this just comes from John's expectations or usually he talks to a lot of the coaches, but this was my expectation as well, which I think is the case for a lot of other people, at least to start the year. I think to start the year, at the beginning of the season, Bill Self typically goes with the guys that he trusts. DeJuan Harris at the 1, guard at the 2, which we'll get to here in a second, Kevin McCullar at the 3, KJ Adams at the 4, Hunter Dickinson at the 5. I think because you trust KJ Adams, because what he did last year, he earns a starting spot to begin the season at the 4. Then you look at the 2. When you look at that lineup, it's like, well, Kevin McCullar, high 20s, low 30% from 3. KJ, not a shooter from 3. Dickinson can shoot it from 3 and shoot it efficiently, but it's not going to be high volume. Where are your 3-pointers coming? DeJuan Harris, like, kind of same thing. He can shoot it very efficiently from 3, but it's not going to be high volume. Where are your 3s coming from in that starting lineup? And that would almost make me believe that it would be Nick Timberlake at the 2, just because you need that floor spacer, similar to how Isaiah Moss was that floor spacer for the team a couple years ago. So that would be my starting lineup projection right off the bat. Now, at the same point in time, even though that's what I expected to be for game 1, and it still wouldn't be that crazy if it was Arterio Morris or somebody else at the 2. I just think from the floor spacing, it would be Nick Timberlake. But maybe we get into December. Maybe we get into January, and things are a little bit clunkier than you would like on the offensive end of the ball because you don't have enough floor spacing. Would it be that crazy if all of a sudden, you move KJ Adams to the kind of first big off the bench? He's your first 4 or 5 off the bench. And then you move Kevin McCullar down to the 4. You slide Nick Timberlake down to the 3. And then all of a sudden, Arterio Morris is starting at the 2. And you have 2 quick ball handling guards. You have the 3-point shooter in Timberlake. You have more shooting. You have more spacing on the floor. You have more ball handling and driving and cutting all around. And even if you do that, you're still able to play KJ Adams 20-plus minutes per game. Now, is it going to upset KJ Adams? Could you have to worry about him transferring another offseason? Possibly, but it's also possible Hunter Dickinson leaves at the end of the year, and then Kevin McCullar would then be officially gone at the end of next season, to where KJ Adams would be looking at, even if he moved from being a starter this year to being a backup at some point, for the 2024 to 25 season, he would be like, oh, well, now all this clearance in front of me, I would be the starter. So you would have to worry about, playing the, is that something that would affect it? But you would also get KJ enough minutes that I don't think, for a guy who has been super, trusted by the coaches, I don't think it would be the end of the world necessarily. But as far as the rotation, and this is what I mean by that, let's say that you're playing Hunter Dickinson 30 minutes per game at the 5. And then the other 10 minutes, even if KJ is coming off the bench, if eventually Kevin McCullar is your 4, your starting 4, you're playing the other 10 minutes with KJ Adams at the 5. Okay, so there's 10 minutes for KJ. And then let's say Kevin McCullar is playing 20 minutes per game at the 4, and he's playing his other 10 minutes per game at the 3. Okay, that still leaves you at 20 minutes per game open at the 4. You could give all 20 to KJ, and now he's playing 20 at the 4, 10 at the 5. That's 30 minutes per game. Or you could even just play him, 12 minutes at the 4, 10 minutes at the 5. He's playing 22 minutes per game. You have 8 minutes left over to get Marcus Adams some run, something like that. Like, you can work this stuff around that even if KJ does eventually come off the bench, he's still playing starter level minutes. But I do expect KJ to start the 4 right away. I think the way I look at it now in the rotation, it's pretty set. You have DeJuan Harris, who's going to be your starting point guard. And then in the handful of minutes he's not playing a point, it would be either Arterio Morris or Marco Jackson. Marco Jackson and Arterio playing minutes at the 2 as well, and maybe even some lineups where you play 3 of those guards together, right? To where maybe they're even playing some of the 3. Nick Timberlake playing some 2, playing some 3 for you. Kevin McCullar playing some 3, playing some 4 for you. KJ Adams playing some 4, playing some 5 for you. Hunter Dickinson playing some 5, and then that gives you 7 people in the rotation. The 8th man in the rotation, would it be Marcus Adams? Would it be another ball handler like a Chris Johnson? Would it be another wing like a Jamari McDowell? Would it be center like Parker Brown? I would probably in that situation to it being Marcus Adams, but it gives you options. But I think realistically, you feel really good about 7 in the rotation at that point in time. And I hope I'm not forgetting somebody when I was going through those different names there. So you can make it all work, but this just feels like it's the final impact player that you needed to solidify and round out the rotation. And you already would have been a national title contender with or without Kevin, but this changes you from being one that is in the group to feeling like you might just be the favorite. And that's pretty cool. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We're going to talk more about who does Kevin McCullar's return impact the most in terms of other players, in terms of playing time, in terms of just increasing their game or making life easier on them. And then we'll get to another episode this week to finish things out about why Kansas should be the clear-cut number 1 preseason team. Now, does it matter? And does that worry anybody at all? I know some people are like, no, I don't want to be preseason number 1. You don't want the expectations. We'll do all that stuff later throughout the week with Locked On Jayhawks. You can catch us anywhere you get any of your podcasts. You can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Have a good one. See you next time.